everybody, hello everybody, hello everybody, hello everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Hello everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you like Therian and furry content, as well as arts and crafts, you are in the right place. Make sure to hit the like button on this video and the subscribe button to my channel if you like this content. Now, today's video is a video I've been meaning to make for a really long time, and it is the ultimate guide to therianthropy. It'll cover pretty much everything you need to know, at least the basics, of what being a Therian is and everything involved with it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, first of all, what is a Therian and what is therianthropy? Now, if you Google what is a Therian, the definition that's going to come up is something along the lines of someone who non-physically identifies as an animal. And that can raise a lot of eyebrows depending on who you are, but the definition really is kind of vague. It doesn't really tell you what a Therian means because no one really offhand knows what non-physically identifying as an animal really entails, right? Now, it can mean a bunch of different things, and that is intentional because therianthropy is a very broad label. Now, therianthropy falls under a category of label called alterhuman, or alterhumanity, which is basically a person who doesn't identify as human in the traditional sense. Someone who identifies as non-human or partially non-human in some way. Now, the reason I bring up alterhumanity is because that is the kind of umbrella label that Therian falls under. Now, being an alterhuman is another broad label. It can mean a number of different things, and a bunch of other labels, including Therian, fall underneath it. So now that begs the question, what does it mean to identify as non-human? Now, that can vary depending on who you ask, and it can definitely vary from Therian to Therian, or alterhuman to alterhuman, depending on which label you're looking at. But basically, when most people look inward and think of themselves, like yourself as a concept on the inside, who you are as a person, right? Most people tend to visualize their physical body. That's what you think when you think of yourself, your physical body, right? But for Therians and other people that don't identify as human, that kind of internal sense of self can be different. Your internal sense of self can essentially be anything. Some people don't really have solid sense of self, and some people have more than one, but that's besides the point. The thing is, not everyone's sense of self is kind of described in the same way. So not everyone's sense of self is human. Not everyone's sense of self is their own physical body. When some people look inwards, including Therians, a Therian might see their theriotype. So basically, instead of seeing your body, when you think of yourself, you see an animal. And that is what a Therian essentially is. So now that goes into the part of theriotype. What is a theriotype? Now, a theriotype is the specific term for what animal your identity is. Whatever animal you identify as is your theriotype. Now, you can have as many theriotypes as you have. I mean, there's no upper limit of how many theriotypes you can have. As long as you have one, you are a Therian. And part of the thing with labels that I like to bring up sometimes is that there are a number of labels that fall under alterhuman, otherkin, Therian. There's so many labels out there. And the thing is, you can identify as a Therian and feel like you are a Therian and that's how you view yourself, and then change the label later on. There are so many out there that you will find the right one, and maybe Therian may not be the right fit, and maybe it will. The point is, just make sure to stay patient and understand that these labels can change, and you can expand your identity as you discover more about yourself. Now, when you see Therian content online, a lot of it is mask-making content, quadrobics content, which is to say running on all fours, and things along those lines. Now, are those parts of being a Therian, or are they just things that people do? Now, they are essentially ways to express your therianthropy or to have fun. So they really have nothing to do with being a Therian at all. Now, a lot of Therians online, like the content that is posted for Therian content is mostly mask-related or like gear-related or quadrobics content. That is just the content that Therians tend to make, because a lot of Therians tend to be younger. And younger Therians tend to be the ones that have more time to make crafts and to go outside and run on all fours, so that tends to be what you see as Therian content. Now, quads and gear actually have literally nothing to do with therianthropy, as I think I mentioned earlier, but it's more so a way to express it on the outside. So this mask I wear just because I think it looks cool and because it matches my theriotype. It doesn't necessarily mean as much to me as it might for someone else, because for someone else, their experience might be that their mask makes them feel way more connected to their theriotype and it really helps them and brings them joy, you know? But for me, it's just a mask. Now, quadrobics is basically the sport of running on all fours or kind of like moving like an animal would. I'm pretty sure the origin of quadrobics in general was from like mimicking horses. I don't really know if that's true, but I think that's what I've heard, is that it started with like running on all fours to mimic horses running. And then people started to expand on it, and Therians discovered it and decided, well, this is perfect to express my Therian theriotype. I mean, this is fantastic. And then Therian content became quadrobics, mostly. But the important thing to remember is you don't need any gear to be a Therian, and you don't need to do quads to be a Therian. Now, I actually can't do quads. It is something that I'm not really capable of doing. It hurts my body too bad, but luckily, you don't actually have to do quads to be a Therian or be involved in the Therian community. And the same thing goes for masks, tails, things like that. They're just fun art forms and ways to express your therianthropy, fun ways to get creative. They're really not so tied to therianthropy as you might think. Now, there's a number of different types of things that Therians consider gear, or Therian gear, which tend to be masks or tails or accessories to wear that kind of show you're a Therian and express your therianthropy, or make you feel more connected to your theriotype. And one of the most popular forms of gear is the mask. Making masks and buying masks is a huge part of a lot of the online Therian community, and I personally like it. I like making masks, and I like buying masks. I think it's really cool. But again, it's important to remember that mask making has nothing to do with being a Therian. It is more so a way to have fun and express yourself. And even if you're not a Therian, even if you're a furry, even if you're anything else, then you can make masks and wear them and enjoy them. They're not just for Therians. And some Therians may, including myself, may call them Therian masks, but that does not mean that they're limited only to Therians. It more so means that that's the type of mask it is, at least the style we're referring to. But Therian gear can be a fun way to express your therianthropy and show your theriotype kind of on the outside. Now, masks are, again, the most popular kind, but there are also tails that you can get. That's a very common type of gear. Paws are another common one to wear over your hands to look like paws. Claws. There's so many different ways to express your therianthropy and show your theriotype in the form of gear. But I think the most popular types of gear are masks, tails, paws, things like that. But pretty much anything can be considered Therian gear if it makes you feel more connected to your theriotype. So there's not just masks and tails as gear. Now, an important thing that I'm going to cover is the fact that therianthropy is not harmful and it is not a mental illness. A lot of people come into the comments, usually haters, and they're like, this is crazy, this is a mental illness. And the thing is, therianthropy is not a mental illness and it does not cause harm. See, for something to be a mental illness, it has to be something that causes harm to the individual experiencing it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an illness. If you're experiencing symptoms such as depression, then you go to a specialist and you get treatment, you know what I mean? Because there's something that's bothering you about the depression. It hurts, it's a bad experience. But being a Therian is either a neutral experience or a positive one. Now, there are negative sides to it, but it's never really something that is actively harming the individual experiencing it. Now, if you are experiencing harm connected to your therianthropy, if it is causing you any sort of anxiety, fear, pain, suffering, sadness, if it's overwhelming you, then chances are it is another mental illness that you also have affecting your therianthropy, because therianthropy in and of itself is not a mental illness. But if you are having those experiences and your therianthropy is negatively impacting you, please go see a medical professional or a mental health professional, someone who can take care of you and help you out. Because those experiences, they're temporary and you shouldn't be experiencing them. And if they happen to you regularly, a professional is probably a good person to talk to about it. And if you don't have access to a medical professional or a mental health professional, make sure to talk to a trusted adult or very close friend, partner, cousin, someone close to you, grandparent. That way you can kind of let it out of your brain and kind of be like, yes, this is kind of causing me harm, and let's go from there and talk about it. It's definitely something you don't want to go through alone, and it's not something you want to keep to yourself. If you are having mental health struggles, whether it's tied to your therianthropy or not, make sure to reach out for help, because help is out there, and you deserve to be happy and healthy. Now, part of the reason that people ask if therianthropy is kind of a mental illness is in part because it is an internal identity. It is kind of odd to see people identifying as things other than human to most people. So if they see it, they're like, that must be crazy. That must be someone who's mentally ill. But really, therianthropy is just a way to identify. It is it is not a mental illness and does not cause harm. The other part of why people ask the mental illness question a lot is because of shifts. Now, shifts are something that you've probably heard in the Therian community, and it's another part that's actively confusing because different definitions mean different things, and there's all these labels and experiences, and every Therian experiences different shifts, so how do we make sense of it all? So there are essentially 4 main types of shifts. There are others, there's so many others, because therianthropy is a wide range of experiences, but the main types of shifts are the mental shift, the phantom shift, the sensory shift, and the dream shift. And those are the 4 that I think most Therians experience the most often. So before I get into what the shifts mean, not every Therian experiences shifts, and you don't have to experience shifts or every single type of shift to be a Therian. Now, it is very common for Therians to experience shifts, but technically you don't have to experience them. So let's get into what these shifts are. So the first type of shift is a mental shift. It's where your mind state changes to more represent your theriotype. So if you have a fox theriotype, this may mean you're more curious, you're more kind of excitable. It can mean a number of different things, and a mental shift can mean so many different experiences for so many different Therians, but it's essentially when your mind state changes to connect more with your theriotype. Whether that mean like thinking in a similar way to the animal that it is, like curiosity for a fox, like example, or it's more so like just thinking like your theriotype or feeling connected in a way that's in your brain and your kind of sense of self, essentially. Phantom shifts, which I think are the most talked about in the Therian community, at least right now, are shifts where you feel a part of your body that is not physically there, such as feeling wings or a tail. Feeling something that is not actually physically part of your body would be a phantom shift. So for me, sometimes that feels like having paws instead of hands, but things like that. That would be a phantom shift. Now, a sensory shift is more so where your senses start to change. Like if you have a wolf theriotype, your sense of smell might really heighten. You might feel like your hearing's like more accurate or louder. You might have some physical sensations such as that. And the last type of shift I'm including in this video, because it's actually one of the more common ones for myself, is dream shifts, or experiencing a shift while you are asleep or in an altered state of consciousness, such as meditation. This is where you experience, it could be a number of things, but either being your theriotype or some kind of very dream-like experience of being a Therian. So when you're dreaming and you're asleep and you dream of your theriotype, that would be a dream shift. Now, having dreams of being an animal does not necessarily mean you are a Therian. There are so many factors that go into being a Therian, and just having dreams about being an animal does not necessarily mean you are one. But it doesn't mean that you're not one, it just means that you had a dream about being an animal. But if it seemed like really important or significant, that may be a sign that you are a Therian, and you should probably look into like what your theriotypes are and kind of how therianthropy works, which if that's why you're here, you're in the right place. Good job. Now, how do you know if you are a Therian? This is the question that so many people ask me every single day. How do you know? And the thing is, you just will. Therianthropy is a wide variety of experiences, and the only person who can know for sure if you are a Therian is you. There is no amount of guide or research or anything that'll really perfectly tell you if you are a Therian or not. The only thing that will is kind of self-reflection and being like, is this label for me? Am I a Therian? And really just kind of sitting with it and thinking like, do I have a theriotype? Do I really feel non-human? Is this who I am? And having these questions with yourself often is kind of a good thing. I like to ask myself questions about who I am pretty regularly, just to kind of understand and keep grounded in reality, you know? But looking inward through either meditation or kind of research into what animals you are questioning is a really good way to help kind of jumpstart that experience of, am I a Therian? Researching different animals that you kind of have an assumption of, like if you kind of feel like, yeah, maybe I'm a fox Therian, I don't really know though, and then looking into what foxes kind of do and what they experience and how a fox lives, that might kind of be like, yeah, you know what, that's how I feel like a fox. And that's a good technique that I like to suggest to try first, is if you have like an inkling of what your theriotype may be, look into the animal a bit more and just think like, is this who I am? Am I this animal? Now, if you don't have any questioning theriotypes and you're just like, I feel like I might be a Therian, A good way is to meditate. I suggest meditating for anyone, Therian or otherwise, questioning or otherwise. Meditation is such a really good tactic for kind of discovering who you are and kind of calming down and getting grounded. So what I'd recommend is if you're trying to find your theriotype, to sit in a comfortable position, listen to probably some relaxing meditation music that you can probably find on YouTube or somewhere, and just kind of listen to the music, close your eyes and breathe, and try to focus on your theriotype. Just try to think of an animal that is you. And it may take a while, but somewhere in your brain one will pop up. And it might not be a confident, like, yes, this is my theriotype, but you might be like, I kind of thought about a lion there for a little bit. Maybe I'm a lion. And just kind of try out like different theriotype labels and just experiment with your identity until it feels right. And I like to just mention all the time in my videos that there is no linear path to figuring out if you're a Therian, and there's no right way to be a Therian, there's no wrong way to be a Therian, and there's no bad things if you identify as a Therian and realize that you are not one. Because labels change and people grow. As you age and grow, your mind does too. And as your experiences change, so does your mind. And you may not feel as connected to your theriotype, you may feel that label Therian no longer fits you, or you may feel stronger and you might develop more theriotypes and really self-discover who you are, and that therianthropy is a huge part of your life. It can really go both ways. But I bring this up because if you think you are a Therian, don't worry about being wrong. Because even if you are wrong, there's no harm in it. Because identifying as a Therian for any reason, like as long as you think you are one, then there's no harm in it if you no longer identify that way. Because you did at the time, you thought you were. So there's no harm in identifying as a Therian, even if you find out later you aren't one. So if you're questioning being a Therian, using that label is completely fine. As long as you are considering yourself a Therian, there's no kind of way to be like, well, I want to make sure that I can use the label. Go ahead. If you feel like you're a Therian, you probably are a Therian. And there's always the way of removing the label off of yourself. Which brings me to my other question, which I think a lot of parents might be asking, and that is, can you grow out of therianthropy? Now, this is going to be a bit of a sadder conversation because it involves bullying, but let's get into the nitty-gritty of being a Therian. So a lot of Therians and Therian content online are for kids, and like by people that are probably ages like 8 to like 15, you know? I'm 21, so I'm a bit of an exception to that kind of Therians or younger rule, because Therians can be literally any age. It's not an identity that has to be for kids. It's just kids are the ones who post about it the most. And some of those kids will inevitably not label themselves as Therians eventually, and that's how it goes. And can you grow out of it? Not really if you are a Therian, but if you identify as a Therian for a while and realize you're wrong, then that's kind of the way that you would grow out of it, essentially. But on that kind of train of younger Therians, is therianthropy really a safe experience to express yourself in places such as school or among peers or online? So there are a lot of risks with posting online of being a Therian or being open about being a Therian in school. And those risks are very real, because if you are bringing gear to school or identifying as a Therian in school, people are going to think you are weird. That is a fact of life. They will. There will be someone at your school who thinks you are strange. But then again, someone at your school will think you are strange for anything. So really wearing that gear to school, as long as you're safe, I'd recommend being true to yourself and not caring what other people think, as long as it doesn't harm you. If it is harming you either like mental health wise or physical health wise, then do not express your therianthropy at school. I'd recommend kind of keeping that to yourself just to stay safe. But otherwise, if there's no immediate danger and there's no like bullying that will really cause harm, then please, by all means, express your therianthropy. Because listen, life is short and life is not guaranteed. And it's kind of nice to live as your true self more than someone who blends into society. But a lot of people might not be able to handle that pressure yet, because there's a lot of pressure with conforming, especially for younger people who are maybe in middle school or high school. There's a lot of pressure to conform, and being a Therian is clearly not conforming. Most people aren't Therians, and so they may not understand and they may make fun. And that's true for a lot of things. Kids make fun of kids for everything. If your kid is going to be made fun of, they will be made fun of, regardless of being a Therian or not. But that doesn't mean that you should be afraid of expressing your therianthropy, because if you are confident in your therianthropy and don't let it get to you, like, they will not affect you, at least in person. Because unfortunately online there is a never-ending onslaught of people that are mean and comment awful things. Online is unavoidable, but my tip for online is just pretend they're not real. Pretend they're AI. Pretend that these comments are AI generated and they just happen to like there's a bug in the network on the app you're using or something. I don't know. But there's a bug and it's causing these hateful comments to come from bots that look like real people. And kind of just separating yourself from the reality of the hate comment kind of helps you ignore them. Because it doesn't help you not believe they're real, because that's not the point. It's more so to get you kind of desensitized to them, because if you're going to be posting Therian content online, you're going to get hate comments. I'm just going to be honest there. But if you kind of desensitize yourself to them, they don't bother you anymore. And listen, people will comment things all the time, but they don't really care. Like, they don't actually, like, I mean, there are some people that really hate Therians, but that's more so a reflection on how strange they are for hating someone who literally is causing nobody harm and doing nothing, essentially. So there you have it. There is a basic rundown of everything you need to know about the basics of the Therian community and being a Therian. Now, this video is obviously non-exhaustive. There are way more parts to the Therian community than just these. But if you have any ideas in the videos that you want to see or topics that you want me to discuss, make sure to comment them below so I can know to make that video next. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this content, you like my videos, make sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button to my channel. It helps me so much. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you got some good information out of this video, and I will see you next time.